My name is Carol Van Leeuwenk, and welcome to Clarity Medicine. We are going to discuss that slippery slide that everyone experiences from, say, about the mid-40s into the late 60s. And I'm telling you now, if you don't know about it, you need to know about it, because so many stages are considered just aging that are reversible. And when left to our own devices and ignored, we do have episodic experiences in our late 60s and 70s that are just not fun. More importantly, they are avoidable. So let's start with, why would anybody want to learn about aging? After all, we always ignore aging. Who wants to be old? Who wants to talk about aging? Who wants to talk about being sick? Not me, but I've learned the importance of paying attention, and I hope to share information with you so that you will have a better idea of what questions to ask and where to go for information. At least you'll have a better regimen of questions to get the information you need. My first event, just as a preface, my first life-changing event was when they took my grandmother away in an ambulance to Utica State Medical Hospital sometime in the 60s. I was a teenager at the time, and I remember being terrified, sad for my grandmother, and terrified that I too someday may have Alzheimer's or dementia and end up in a home and on medication. It was a terrifying thought for a teenager, because I had no way of knowing. Nobody knew back then how to fix it or treat it. Now there's some really great research going on, and we have hope, but that was very important and affected me tremendously. The second life-changing event that directed me towards understanding my body and medicine better was at age 43. I'd rollerbladed with my son the day before, and I had gotten on my blades the next day, and I was rolling around the neighborhood where I usually go, and there was an exceptional amount of traffic, and so I ducked down and came back up, but nobody had explained to me that when you duck down like that, excuse me, it can affect your blood pressure and such. And I blacked out. I could hear, but I blacked out. I knew exactly where I was going downhill. I could hear the cars, so I was trying to find a safe way to land and not be underneath the car when it was over with. So I had gone over to the other side of the road that typically has no cars in the street, and just tried to slow down, and lo and behold, my vision came back, and I was about 10 inches from the back of a pickup truck, still going downhill. Yeah. So it was impactful, I must say, and when my head went back and hit the road and bounced, I finally stopped counting the number of times it bounced, and my neck muscles weren't strong enough to make it stop. So I just kind of calmed down and waited for that. And then a very nice laborer grabbed me and was trying to jerk me up. And fortunately, my brain didn't swell for about 60 seconds. And I was able to entreat him to knock on the door of the person's house that I had fallen in front of. It was my first and only trip in an ambulance to the hospital. And I assure you, number one, those rollerblades stayed in my storage for many years before I threw them out. I kept them as a reminder about how not to be stupid. And for me, stupidity was, of course, not wearing gloves and a helmet that day. Usually I did. Don't know why I didn't. Just thought I was cool. That was stupid. Anyway, well, here's the interesting thing. When I went to the doctor, I ended up in the hospital and had to have surgery because I had fractured my skull. And I had I had back issues in my neck and my lower spine. We did a couple surgeries to straighten my face out. And when we went in for the x-ray and looked at the bones and the backbones, you could see where there was damage, but most of the problems were soft tissue. And I asked the doctor, I had insurance at the time, and I said, well, can do you do anything for soft tissue? It's the muscles that are traumatized here, and I can hardly keep my head up, and I'm in a hell of a lot of pain. What do you got? And they're like, nope, we don't do soft tissue. Nothing's covered by insurance? Nope. And that was my slam dunk into the alternative world on how to break up scar tissue and take pain that was ranging a good 10 plus every day on a scale of 1 to 10 and bring it down to 0. It actually took me 20 years, but and for that reason, I am pain averse. I promise you, and I've been much more cautious in my endeavors. But there was no way I was at 43, I was going to spend another 30 or 40 years in that kind of discomfort. So I found a way. The third life event that taught me so much was when I realized that I had cancer. And I just sat down in my car and I slammed the steering wheel and I said a little prayer, and it wasn't a nice one. I said, God, you don't understand. I want to be here for my grandchildren. I'm too young. I'm not going, so you better figure it out. So I ended up in the office of a homeopathy group, and that was a life-changing experience. One of the first things I did was look myself in the mirror and say, this is cancer. Cancer is a virus, so we're going to give it a small c. We're not going to make it capital C-A-N-C-E-R anymore. You want to beat this, so you have to have the right attitude to do that. From that point on, I rarely, if ever, said the word cancer. If I did think it, I saw it just as a small c in little parentheses, and worked on several remedies and to beat it. And it took 6 weeks, 4 days a week of therapies in order to reduce the size of the tumors and actually get them to disintegrate. And interestingly enough, some of those, it had spread up into my arm in here, which I wasn't aware of until I started doing the therapies. And in week 3, the tumors in my breast actually started to soften and break down. They were soft under touch. And I felt this shrinking it was like a screen or something under my skin, and I felt it shrink down. And since then, I've read about cancer spreading through the lymphatic system. There was a very good article, I think it was last year, by some physicians who have done research on how cancer spreads. Great article. And I believe I've referenced it, or will reference it in our future blogs. So while it took only 6 weeks to complete and test positive on a cancer die-off, it took another 4 years to clean up the mess on the inside, to eliminate the dead cancer cells, to put my body back in homeostasis, in a healthy homeostasis that would allow me to be a real human being again, not be worried whether I'd be tired and not be able to complete my jobs, and if I'd be able to work and into my 50s and 60s, because I had made that decision that that's what I was going to do, is work and so provide for myself. I didn't want to be an imposition on my children. They work so hard, and I didn't want to stress them out. So that's what we did. We learned to beat cancer. One of the best things I've ever done. The most important thing is fixing my body afterwards so that I would have long-term, sustainable life capability and no depression, no fatigue. Just happy.